Okay, so this lesson you're going to learn about scatter plots and the relationship and how you would describe it. So last lesson you should have learned how to do a scatter plot, what they mean. In this lesson you're going to learn how to describe scatter plots. So when you look at a scatter plot, these are kind of all of the things you can use to describe what a scatter plot looks like. So the relationship of a scatter plot is you're looking for scatter plots that have patterns. So a pattern would be a line. So if it makes a line, it's a linear pattern, and if it makes a curve, it's a nonlinear pattern. So you kind of are familiar with those words before. So a linear relationship is when the scatter plot forms a relatively straight. It's not going to be perfect because you're looking at actual data, but the pattern should look like a line if it is linear. A nonlinear relationship would be a scatter plot that forms a curve. Okay, if it has no relationship, you should not see any pattern within the scatter plot, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So if I look at I'm going to draw two scatter plots here, and I am going to look at a scatter plot that has a linear relationship. So that might look like something like this. It kind of looks, although the points are not exactly in a line, it almost starts to form a line. And if you've learned about line of best fit, you can kind of draw a line that kind of models that. A nonlinear relationship would be if something looked like something like this. So if you see, this one kind of forms a curve, which is not linear, so it's not straight. So that would be a nonlinear relationship. Another nonlinear relationship might look something like this. Points might look like this shape. That's also a curve, but it also is not linear. So that would be another example of a nonlinear relationship. So these are both nonlinear, and this one up here represents a linear relationship. So then I want to get into correlation. What does correlation mean? Well, a strong correlation is when the points are really close together. So the closer together they are, the stronger correlation they have, whether it's a curve or a line. As long as they're close together, it's a really strong correlation. A weak correlation is when the points are far apart. So if the points are really spread out and they look linear, but they're not really close together, it's going to be a weaker correlation. No correlation means the points are in no pattern. And I'm going to show you examples of all of these. So in a strong correlation, so maybe I have a strong linear correlation, those points are going to be really close together. And I'm going to maybe make this pen a little bit easier to see. Okay, the points are really close together. That might be a stronger correlation. Say I have a nonlinear correlation, but I have a weak pattern. That means my points are going to be far apart, but you can kind of see it kind of forms a curve still. So that would be a weak correlation when the points are really far apart. A no correlation would look something like this. So if you see the points are all over the graph and there's no pattern. So that would be a no correlation. Okay. So it's either going to be stronger, a weaker, or it's going to have no pattern at all, which would be a no correlation. Okay. And positive correlation means what direction is it going into? So I'm going to use blue for this. But a positive correlation means your points are going up from left to right. So just like if you remember when we talked about lines and if they had a positive slope, this would be a positive correlation. Okay, and so if I write here, I'm just going to say a positive correlation is when the points go up from left to right. So if you look, it starts down here. As it goes from left, we start at the left, as we go to the right, my points are going up, so that means it's positive. And the contrary, a negative correlation, is when the points go down from left to right. So if I did that in a picture, it might look something like this. That would be a negative correlation because the points are going down. Okay, so they're kind of going down like that. Okay, and then the last vocab word that's super important is what's called an outlier. And an outlier is one or two points that do not follow the pattern of the rest of the data. So for example, if I had a graph like this, and most of my points are going in a linear pattern, an outlier is going to be the point that's like right there. So that would be an outlier. And that just might be, a response you don't normally get to whatever data you're collecting. Might be just like a special case scenario. So that could be an outlier, or one that maybe is way up here. That's an outlier. It just doesn't fit in with the rest of the data, but it doesn't necessarily impact the rest of the data. So those are examples of outliers there. So that's really the vocab. So in the practice, you're going to be looking at scatter plots and you're going to tell me about them. So you're going to tell me if it's positive or negative, if it has a strong correlation or a weak correlation, or if there's a relationship at all, or if there's outliers. So you're just going to have to answer practice questions based on that. Thanks for watching.